Alright, so this is gonna be my first TikTok video, and I'm trying to keep this video below 10 minutes. It's a little windy, but I think the audio on this iPhone is pretty good, so you're still gonna hear my audio. Where I'm at is in Colorado. This is a place called Gem Lake. Super gorgeous. I'm on the stone over here. I'm sitting here. And today's topic is going to range from things like nihilism to generational passivity. The term nihilism comes from 18th century Latin word nihil, N-I-H-I-L, and nihil means nothing. So nihilism is a nothing. Many philosophers have taken this term nihilism. I'm going to give you my own take on nihilism, and it's a more complex nihilism because a lot of times people think that they're doing something, but it's still nihilism. Okay, one of my interpretations of nihilism that I take from other philosophers is Nietzsche's nihilism. And Nietzsche's nihilism, the way he describes nihilism in one of his books, is a preservation of life. Okay, so you're preserving your life, and he calls that a will to nothing in a way. Okay, and although you're doing something, right, there's a grand scheme of action, and this action outgrows, you could say, all of society. Okay, we're not really, our actions do not outgrow society, and I think the interpretation is that society holds us into a state of nihilism. With my idea or my interpretation of nihilism, we're going to get to an idea of existentialism. And this is like my own existentialism that I've kind of put together through learning existentialism through one of my teachers, Dr. Mark Tanzer, who wrote a book called On Existentialism. It's published. You can find it online somewhere. What I'm saying is, in society, we're not evolving, right? One of my best things that I use to explain nihilism is grammar, right? And I said that society holds us into a certain kind of preservation of life, okay? And this is not even, grammar itself is not even life, okay? But this is a good example because grammar is not evolving the way humans evolve, okay? So humans, we adhere to grammar when we communicate in typical written language. But when we look at the relationship between humans or life and grammar, grammar is actually doing us, right? Grammar has a set of rules, and we are within the rules of grammar, okay? So we, or even though we're actively using language inside this grammar, there's a philosopher called named Martin Heidegger, and this is one of my takes on Martin Heidegger's question on technology, is that we are standing reserves, right, to things like grammar, right? Nihilism is something that is non-humanistic, and it disposes of the human life, right? You could say that technology, like an escalator or a red light in the middle of the night, when we run up into it, we stop. There's no cars around, right? You could say that the laws are doing us, as opposed to we are doing the laws, right? The grammar, the grammar is doing us, as opposed to we are doing the grammar in a way, okay? Until we unlock or until we open up our language, we won't be able to communicate better, okay? To clarify a few things, I want to say that humans, again, the preservation of humanity in a way, because it doesn't evolve, becomes nihilism, okay? We're within the construct of everything, right? So when I say that grammar is not a humanistic thing, I just want to point out that things like grammar keep us from evolving beyond our status of human preservation, okay? And that's going to bring me on to what I was saying about what we do in society, okay? A lot of times, like people think that when they do their everyday average job, and when they make money, and when they provide for their family, they are doing something productive. But when it comes to like a philosophical nihilism, that actually reinforces the nihilism of society, okay? It reinforces our non-evolving entity of life, okay? And the first step we gotta do is recognize this, okay? And I'm sorry the audio earlier when it was windy, it kind of like got low, but I listened to it while it's windy, so you should be able to pull something out of it. And I'm gonna talk about the existentialism part because I'm already running out of time, because typically when I do a philosophy video, it's like an hour or so. But in terms of existentialism, the way I take it is that there's two nihilisms, okay? There's an active nihilism, which is still an act of nothing, which is you going to work, but you're not evolving, right? You're preserving society to a non-evolving state, right? Or not to a non-evolving state, you're just reinforcing the nihilism of a non-evolving state, right? An active nihilism. A reactive nihilism is kind of Aristotelian, where you refrain or abstain from your participation of this society where you're preserving humanity, okay? So they're both in nothing, okay? There's the reactive, where you abstain from everything, and there's the active, where you're just doing work, right? But for you to evolve the system, right, it's going to take some type of contemplation, right? So you contemplate on how to assert yourself into society, where it changes society to evolve things. And a lot of times we want to say that it's going to alleviate a lot of things that we are being held hostage to, that we do not control, but we created a structure of control, okay? Pretty short, but that was 10 minutes. My first TikTok video. And I'm gonna try to shoot a couple more. I want to encourage the generations to break this nihilism, okay? I'm actually gonna try to shoot another video about existentialism, so I might put 2 videos out today, okay? this part of nihilism is unique to me, or this part of existentialism is unique to me the way I done it. Okay, it's kind of like me sitting in existentialism class from my teacher for like 3 or 4 semesters, and this is what I put together as my own existentialism. Okay, and I do this whole active reactive nihilism thing, but regardless, both of those are a nothing, right? But one of them, you abstain and refrain from your actions so you can assert yourself into something that's evolving, okay? And the way I do that existentialism is I talk about the common existentialist idea of things like essence and existence, right? That is the crux of the whole existential discussion, right? Which comes first, the essence of life or the existence, right? And maybe the essence of life is probably a little too much information, but the essence or the existence, okay? And the existence is the humanism of the world, okay? And I've shot videos about this, and I'm just gonna go through it again real quick, okay? Humanism, the idea of humanism is something that is non-definitional, right? In a way, it's something that is, when we say something, what we say is an unrevealing of something that already existed, okay? When we talk about language and stuff, language itself, when it comes to communication, what exists in language is the possibilities of ways to communicate. So all the words that I could say, the possibilities of me talking for 10 minutes, it unreveals itself as something that already existed, right? So existentialists will say that existence precedes the essence, okay? Now, essence is a little different, okay? So the whole branch of existentialism, commonly known by a French philosopher named Jean-Paul Sartre, he says that existence precedes essence, okay? And I'm gonna tell you mine. So what's going on between the essence and the existence is the existence is the objectification of our communication, while the essence would be possibilities, okay? So the possibilities is non-existence, right? So I'm going to take a different stance from Sartre's existentialism and say that the essence precedes existence in a way. Or I'm not going to say it precedes, I'm going to say that it's part of a configuration, okay? And we have both the essence and the existence without any of them preceding one another, okay? So on one hand, we have possibilities, okay? And that is like an essence of just life in general. The configuration has possibilities of life, okay? Like that is like a type of essence. And just to be alive without even communication, but you still have your sensations and all that stuff, your things that you do to be alive, that is your essence. And the essence includes that you're able to have existence, right? To communicate in the existential way, okay? So we have these configurational aspects of life, okay? And the thing about existentialism in a Sartrean sense is that it kind of runs off with existence, right? So everything becomes this deterministic thing where pretty much the future is already written out, okay? But with Sartre, even though the future is written out, you actually change the future at the same time. So everything you do is within these possibilities of existence, right? And whatever you choose to put out in your discussion or your humanism, it changes the possibility of what you could do in the future, right? Because in one way, existentialism and Sartrean, in a Sartrean way, you cannot do the exact same thing twice, okay? When you do something again, it's going to gain everything in between one event to the other, okay? That's my take on Sartrean existentialism, okay? But what I do is I refrain from it, right? I refrain from this human existence, okay? And it doesn't say that me refraining from human existence that I'm not writing this determinate future. I'm just saying that it becomes vacuous, right? In a way that is deterministic, okay? You're gonna have to think about that, okay? Because the pure existence that people say that they're in, I'm gonna say that's oversaturated, okay? I'm gonna fall into the essence of things rather than the existence of things, okay? We're gonna fall back into the essence. Philosophy of existentialism, you're gonna have to hold back, you're gonna have to fall back on completely going into the determinism, okay? Because it's oversaturated. And I'm gonna say that the way we could do existentialism is that we could assert ourselves little by little, okay? And what's going on is we can harness the evolution of humanity if we have a perspective of the possibilities, okay? If we have a perspective, we're able to go beyond it, okay? Louder there, so I'm on my way down. So what I'm saying ultimately, and it's less windy out here, is that there's a configuration, right? And what is configurative about existence is that there's possibilities and there's that communication part of existence where everything is determined, right? And if we refrain from this determinism, what goes on is our refraining is actually writing something, but when we assert ourselves into existence, right, into our writings or whatever, what happens is we could slowly put out our evolution, okay? Now, that in itself, when we look at it in terms of the way people think in general, to harness our existence rather than live in existence, we are staying in the realm of possibilities, right? And that's like a type of evolution on its own, okay? Coming from a configuration, when we look at things as saturation and oversaturation, we're coming from a stance of undersaturation, right? And the problem with oversaturation is that it is vacuous, as in oversaturation comes and goes on its own, okay? But what I'm proposing is that we never go into full saturation and we harness the light from a stance of darkness, right? It's like a sponge, okay? I actually, when I did this many years ago, I called this existential philosophy washing out the sponge, right? DASPONGE, right? The sponge, because of Heidegger's Das Mann, what he was saying, or Dasein, okay? So what I'm saying is that the sponge is exfoliating when you squeeze it a little, right? And if you squeeze all of it out, it's going to collapse on itself, or it's gonna, engulf back into the water without control, right? It's hard to control that way. But if you squeeze it a little and let it come back, and you squeeze it again and let it come back, you'll harness a type of evolutionary society, right? And that is a nihilistic approach to society, but it's evolving where you're in control of certain things, right? So that's a new existentialism. So when I talk about existentialism, I am saying that as part of configuration, we have the essence and possibilities and existence, which is the determinism. Because existence itself is part of the configuration, but not necessarily necessary. When we say existentialism, that is deterministic. So if we go as far as existentialism, we have to say that everything is deterministic in some sense, right? And if we give Sartre his existence precedes essence, then everything is predetermined, but our actual future inside of the existence itself is changing as we live, as we play out the existence part, right? The essence part, the washing out the sponge, it doesn't necessarily, because it's not necessary that we have existence, okay? There's been life before we had this communication, okay? Maybe we had to go through existence precedes essence to get all this other philosophy. But I know I went over 10 minutes, so I'm gonna put the first two videos together. This me walking down from Gem Lake is I cut out like the last 5 minutes because people were just up there being loud around me. But I did existentialism. I was really into existentialism like 10 years ago. In a societal standpoint, right? In a societal standpoint, we are all nihilists, right? And we got to break this mold, right? This culture of passivity. A lot of these things, well, when you understand our existence, or not existence, that's not a good word to use after this lecture, but when we understand our being, I think what I'm saying is we could alleviate a lot of the stagnant, non-evolutionary ways of life, right? And laws that keep us from just simple gratification, right? We are not living to our potential because there's a lot more possibilities for us to do, and denialism is holding us from it, okay?